Three Righteous Mamas is a podcast that is on a mission to transform our country. We tell the stories that matter, celebrate the power and hope of pissed off mamas who are building a better future for all of our children. I'm Martha Pinkoffs.
I'm Muna Husseini.
And I'm Christina Sensun Ramirez.
Three Righteous Mamas.
Let's get to it, y'all.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the craziness of the day.
There's craziness of the week, y'all. So we had planned to talk about the debates, but there's been so much that's happened since then. And I don't know about y'all, but it feels like trying to find stability in this crazy, unstable world for our kids is just one of the hardest things to do as a mom right now.
Things seem to be changing minute to minute in this news cycle, right? And so yeah, I agree. Hard to figure out how to navigate.
Well, and hard to regulate my own emotions so I can be a present parent, right? When every time I read the news and I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me that this is happening? And so I find that, when I let that really dysregulate me, I am not the best parent.
Yeah. And then I think, Martha, just if we think about the level of chaos that is created by this president across this country for millions and millions of families, we're all being thrown into that all the time. And it is really hard to deal with your emotions. I feel like in some ways though, I've become, if you think about the first few months of his administration, there's a numbness, I think, that's there now. Actually, when I met you, Muna, through when we did that rally, a lot of it was about the No Ban, No Wall rally, the Muslim ban. And that was this huge chaotic moment for our country. And now something like that can happen from day to day. And we're all like, how did that?
Of course that happened.
The desensitizing effect that they want.
Well, right. That even the way that we metabolized the information about the forced hysterectomies, I feel like that got a blip of a news cycle. And that is it speaks to the level of desensitization and
the callousness we've gotten used to, that if immigrant women in the care of our federal government in this day and age can be forced to have hysterectomy. To be sterilized.
Yeah.
And let's think about that on two levels, right? Where if our administration is pro-life, what does that mean? But then double clicking again, why are women or separated from men needing hysterectomies in that kind of facility?
Right.
I don't even want to have finish the thought.
No, I don't either. And I don't want to accept this normal, and I guess that even for our kids, how do we reject this as normal, and how do we hold on to this, this decency, this fight for humanity and what is right? How do we hold on to that? How do we hold on to that right now?
I don't know. I wonder for both of you more than for me, because Santi's only 3. So I'm able to create a little bubble around it, but your kids are in school and the chaos within our school system, the chaos within the disconnect from the presidency to our governor here in Texas to local parents and what they need. There's just so much information that your kids are exposed to that I can protect my child from right now because he's so small, but I don't know how do you not let it be normalized but also create a sense of stability and safety for your kids?
I know one thing that we try to do for that is to give them power and agency in the moment, but we don't, we took them to Breonna Taylor's memorial in Louisville. We were driving through Louisville and we went and paid our respects to Breonna Taylor, and and told them exactly the story. This woman was sleeping in her bed. She was shot by police officers. Those police officers are not in trouble. And that offends their sense of justice, like, so profoundly, that we try to balance it with, and here's what we can do about it as a family. But I do think it's important for them to, especially as white kids with a lot of privilege, I want them to see and participate in that grief and that story, because it is our story too.
My daughter is 12 and she's very aware of everything. I have friends that chastise me. Why do you talk to her about everything? She doesn't need to know. And I say, what about the children that don't get a choice? Mm. My children need to be there when those children's choices are taken away. And it doesn't mean I have to, I tell her enough that lets her be informed, so that she can be educated about what to do in certain situations, right? Like where, even let's just talk about watching the debate and the amount of interrupting and the rudeness, right? And like watching it is one thing, right? Like me turning my TV on was like inviting this conversation into my home. And as an adult, I just wanted to turn it off. And I'm sitting there with my 12-year-old and I'm like, oh, how do I help her understand how to engage when this is what other people are doing in your presence? We have to like model it. She has to understand it. And I have to help her know where are her boundaries, where is her agency, and then kind of curate, like, what do you let in? What do you internalize? What do you push back out? Just because something is in your proximity and near you doesn't mean it has to have something to do with you that you make your own. And so it's a conversation we have all of the time where I say, people make the choices that are right for them, and we're going to make the choices that are right for us. And like, how do you stay in your lane, and how do you make sure someone else has their lane, right? And so like, I try super hard not to put judgment into that, to make the choices that other people make being a wrong thing. I just say, look, they're making the choices that are right for them, right? And I try to just repeat like these like sort of toddler-esque statements over and over, because then she can carry them with her to be able to respond in any situation. And the other thing I say is when these things come up, or like I'll ask her, I'm like, if someone's fighting like that around you, what should you do? And I make her model it, because it makes me think of like a self-defense class I went to where you had to practice like yelling in someone's face and shoving them. It's like, maybe for someone who plays soccer, it's normal to like shove people, but that's not like muscle memory that like most people have, right? And so how are we doing that? Because I love that you're giving your kids agency and talking about that, but then like, if you're in the middle of a situation, it takes a lot of courage to actually like stand and hold your position, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like I don't have the luxury of letting my kid hang back anymore and hope that she's not going to deal with something.
I wish that folks would teach that someone would have taught Trump that as a child. And I wish that, it's funny because you asked kids, what do you do in that moment? And I know that so many moms watch the debate, like, and said, grab a mother and have her be the moderator of this debate, right? I think we would have had a totally different outcome. We all know how to do timeouts and, situation.
My mom would have pinched me under the table.
I would have been pinched too. Totally.
Would have gotten that death stare, it would have been over. But then, okay, so since then, so we saw the debate unfold, but then now like Trump has gotten COVID, and a lot of Republicans or people close to the administration have tested positive, right? And there seems to be a whole other situation reverberating there. And it's I'm really curious how things are going to pan out and what's actually going on, because it's hard. And I'm not a paranoid person, but it's really hard for me to trust, like, well, what is actually going on? And that by itself to me is problematic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're all trapped in a novel. And
Did Margaret Atwood write it?
yeah, that's what some people think that. Margaret Atwood, for people that don't know, of course, is the writer
The
of
Handmaid's Tale.
which I started binge watching last month. A really good time to watch the show. But I definitely feel like we're trapped in a novel sometimes, and I just really hope it has a good ending for the majority of us. I just don't know what's going to happen. One of the things I think like the lessons for our kids in this moment. I saw a friend of mine post something on Twitter. He said, the day that the announcement that Trump had COVID, because there were all kinds of things that people were saying, right? You even had Twitter yesterday, I think, announced that they were going to delete people's tweets that wished people death or harm, because there was so much of that. And anyway, my friend posted, I know I need to be a better person and not wish harm on people, but I'm finding it really difficult to do. And I can understand that sentiment, because there is so much harm caused by this president, real harm, real harm, irreparable harm to so many families and communities. But I think what's important is to not, I think sometimes people treat social media, especially when I think about our kids, people treat social media as like they're just, saying things out into the open space and no one can hear it and there are no consequences, but there are consequences to it. And I think, so, it's always about how you respond when you're under assault or under attack, right? That really says a lot about you. And I think that, look, I do not wish Trump to be president at all. I think he is a damaging, harmful force. I would say many of the actions, while he may not be an evil person, the actions against communities of color, against immigrants, against Muslims are evil, because they refuse to see other people's humanity. I think when you refuse to see other people's humanity and your consequences on them, that can be an evil action. While you may not be, your actions can be. I want him to lose on the merits of his ideas, on the failure of them, right? And I think that's what I want us to see happen.
Because I think if we do have that, that is our redemptive moment, and that's where we choose our own adventure for better. And we are in this very pregnant moment where we start voting in a week from tomorrow in Texas. Today was the last day people could register to vote. This is the time for all of us to show up and do the thing. And if it's fair, which I don't know that it will be, I want to see a very overwhelming rejection of that basic lack of humanity.
I think your point about voting is really important, in the sense that with so much change and instability, and you can call it what you want, it feels like harm to me, but maybe to other people it feels like instability. Where are the things where we can actually turn a lever? And for some people that's voting. For other people, voting still feels like it doesn't make a difference, right? Or there's also being disenfranchised, right? With places in Houston only having one place to drop off a ballot. I mean, these are things I never thought I would see in my lifetime, of voter suppression so blatantly happening. Not in a history book, it's right now.
Yep.
Right. And my hope is that these younger generations do not sit out, because if they show up and they're loud and proud, change is possible. I don't know that it's always intentional. Like your path isn't going to be what you want it to be all the time, but it's so important to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And that's really what I want my kids to take away, because I believe with the way things are going, there is this intention of having people be disengaged, like, oh, I'm so turned off, I don't want to show up. And that's a tactic.
That's
It is a tactic
Yeah,
to
it
want
is.
people to not show up. And so I hope that our kids learn and take that one page out of our book just to keep going.
Well, I think that's a great place to start interviewing our guests about how to keep going. So let's get to it.
Today we have Liz Lambert joining us. She's been called so smart, so Texas, and so global all at the same time. She hails from Odessa, Texas, is a UT and UT Law grad. I'd like to brand you a change maker. You went from the field of law to being a boutique hotelier, but something tells me you're not a fan of that combination of terms. It might be a little too frou-frou for you. So in my own words, from my reading, you take spaces and create community through creativity and connection with the land to make a place that embodies art and culture where people want to be. Liz is a partner and a new mother from what I gather. So congratulations, Liz, and welcome to the Three Righteous Mamas podcast. We are so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Lyndon just turned 2, day before yesterday, a few days ago.
What was that birthday party like during COVID?
Well, he doesn't know that he's 2, and he didn't know that it was his birthday. So basically, it was a hastily purchased cupcake from Hey Cupcake, and I think we did a rendition of Happy Birthday.
Yeah, this mama is guilty of that. Well, they don't know better, and they'll be excited with this one cupcake.
I mean, I feel like next year he might know. I don't know. I mean,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, right now he's not going to school or seeing other children, so what does he know, right?
He knows your house.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah.
And mamas create all the happiness in the home. And, you know, on that note, being that we are the Three Righteous Mamas, we kind of wanted to start off talking about mamas and maybe your mother or any other strong maternal figure in your life. How did this person shape the way you engage with the world? You know, that could be business, politics, parenthood, your worldview, your creativity, right? I'd really like to think about that and hear about that influence for you.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome that you guys start off that way. You know, my mom was a huge influence on me. She was a very West Texas woman, a woman of that particular place in time. And if you ever go into Joanne's on South Congress, you will see there's a big portrait of her with, she's got a shotgun. She's got her hand on her hip and her nails painted red and a shotgun over her shoulder. And that definitely does not sum her up, but it definitely gives you a little view of Joanne. So she shaped so many things for me, and so much of my just view of the world and expectation of the best in people and all kinds of things like that. But she really instilled a love of hotels in me, and I've always been thankful to her for that.
That's so sweet.
How does one instill a love of hotels in their children? It's interesting because in our previous podcast, we talked about sort of intentionally being focused with our children. And I'll be honest, that's not one that crossed my, it's not on my list, but now I think it needs to be on there.
I don't know that it was intentional. I mean, I don't think it was on her list of, oh my God, think about our mothers. I'm 56, so it's a whole different thing. It's like I had 3 older brothers, and I think just, you know, I can't imagine there were many rules at all around anything in my upbringing, period.
Right.
It was just kind of the Wild West. And so I don't think it was intentional that she instilled a love of hotels. It's just that she, you know, my grandfather was a rancher, and he didn't have an office. And so I think that the hotels that my mom loved, or that I first experienced, were hotels that were part of a community, where they were sort of a meeting spot where there you could get your boots shined, or you would take business meetings, or you could get your hair cut, or you'd have Sunday brunch. They, you know, and Odessa was far from glamorous, but it had a hotel downtown, and that was my experience from early on. That was kind of this place. Yeah, I guess now we would call it a third place, but it was a place that wasn't your home, and it wasn't. It was a familiar place, but it was just another place that you would go, but it felt a little more elevated. You know, you knew that you had to be maybe dressed in a certain way and on better behavior. My mom also really loved to travel, and so we would go. She loved to stay in a nice hotel. So a lot of the events of my life, because usually when you're at a hotel, something's going on, right? So
Right.
a lot of the events of my life, I can name the hotel I was at when it happened.
You were engineered for it.
I guess so. I mean, I'm sort of an accidental hotelier, but yeah, for sure. You know, my mom actually, they used to take the train. My mom grew up in Odessa as well. They used to take the train into Fort Worth to like go to the doctor and go shopping and do those kinds of things. And my mom actually, they took an overnight train from Odessa to Fort Worth the day that Kennedy was shot.
Wow.
And
Oh, wow.
he actually came down. When they got to the Texas hotel, they were waiting in the lobby, and he came down with Jackie and with Lyndon Johnson, like another politician, I don't remember who, and
George
and
Conley, I bet.
George Conley, that's right.
Yeah.
And Kennedy gave a speech in the parking lot at the Texas hotel, and my granddad pushed my mom forward, and she shook Kennedy's hand.
Oh my God.
And right after that, they left for Dallas. Yeah.
Wow.
My mind is just blown like right now.
I know, right?
I have the full chill. So she shook his hand on the day he died.
Yeah.
Ah.
And I was probably
Right.
3 months old. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing then that you have these experiences in your youth of remember being in hotels and all the things going on, and apparently you were dressed and on better behavior than normal. And
By the way, I'm not always on better behavior at a hotel.
we'll save that for later in the podcast. We want to hear about your.
That's for the Dykes and Debutantes section.
We'll say, yeah. Tell us the most naughty thing you've ever done in a hotel.
Oh, you know, I just not for.
Confession section.
Yeah. No. I even made myself blush.
So for our viewers that don't know, Liz is the brains behind Hotel San Jose in Austin, which is, you know, if you're not aware, it is an icon in Austin, and I think it was sort of the thing that paved the road for South Congress or the SoCo district being on the map, right? And that's not the only place of community Liz has created, if you will. We can also talk about El Cosmico, right, out in Marfa, which is you know, Spartan trailers, yurts, tents, wood-fired hot tubs. I mean, when Beyonce shows up, I think that's it, right? Like Queen Bey is there, you're done, right? And so
I feel like it.
Yeah. And Solange.
Yeah.
And so when you think about your youth, and I know you just told us a little bit about how your mother instilled this love of hotels for you, But like, what really drove you to do this work? Right? There must have been some feeling or something, or was it more just like things unfolded as you went? And in my tech world, it's like this iterative approach, right? Like, did you have a vision, or did you walk the yellow brick path and you got there?
I think a little bit of both, but so um, hospitality was always a part of my upbringing, for sure. But yeah, I went when my undergraduate degree was in poetry and creative writing and poetry. Not very useful, not really great on the job market. But so I ended up going to law school at UT, and my first job out of law school was at the DA's office in Manhattan. And then I went to the Attorney General's office back here in Austin when I moved back. And I sort of stumbled into the San Jose. I was interested in design, and I'd long been interested in design. One of my brothers was worked for Knoll and ICF, and I'd always been drawn to it, but I never imagined anything I would do with it. But I think what happened, the San Jose, back when I bought the San Jose for about $500,000, and my mom, I know, it was in 1990, the end of 1995, started 1996, and there was nothing on South Congress. I mean, the Continental Club was there, a few other shops were there, but not much. I mean, there were never any cars on the street. And the San Jose was a $30 a night, seafoam green, run down, sort of, people considered it dangerous at night. Mm-hmm. And a lot of South Congress felt that way.
I wasn't allowed to go there in high school.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think a lot of people weren't. I mean, it was this grand avenue, South Congress was, and it led from the Capitol to San Antonio. That was the main highway to San Antonio. And then, as a lot of downtowns, there was just, as highways came in, I-35 came in first, and then many years later, MOPAT came in, and that just kind of drove all business from downtown Austin, and particularly south of the river. And so you had a lot of these little low-lying, single-loaded businesses that just went out of business or were boarded up or were super, super cheap rent, and just a kind of hodgepodge of shops there, but definitely no restaurants. Schlossky's, the very first Schlossky's was on South Congress, and I think it remained when I got to San Jose. So there was a Taiwanese couple that was at the San Jose, and they were moving to Houston, and they had put the San Jose in the Chinese newspaper. I didn't know that, or they were just about to. And I just wandered over one day to see if they would ever consider selling it. And so it was sort of total serendipity. And I had no idea what I was doing. And so I brought a bottle of champagne to the closing, I remember. And we met in the parking lot for them to hand the keys over, because we weren't going to close the place down. I couldn't afford to. There were a lot of people staying there. I just had no idea. They just didn't have cars or luggage or come out during the day. And they handed me the keys, and I thought that we would toast or something. And they were just like, bye. They had a daughter who was just out of med school in Houston, and they were like, we're going there. So I almost literally stumbled into it. And it was over the years. By the time it was a long journey to the renovation of the San Jose. We opened the way we are now in March of 2000.
So it took 4 years to get it.
Maybe a little bit, 4 years. I mean, we were under construction for about 18 months, but it took me 2 years and change to convince a bank that it was a good idea to make a loan on a business on South Congress, particularly a boutique hotel.
Right.
How'd you end up convincing them?
I'm very tenacious. And the whole thing was, we built the San Jose for nothing. I mean, it was, if you think about it, it was under $2 million.
Right.
So it just couldn't be done. We don't, I'm working on a 74-room hotel in New Orleans right now. That's, 20 times that. It just, I was able to do it because I wasn't doing anything else, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And there weren't a lot of boutique hotels at the time. And, a lot of people would have considered the San Jose a severely limited service hotel with concrete floors and no restaurant. And it seemed pretty stripped back.
Yeah.
You know what comes up for me when you're talking is, in this day and age, we hear so much about women or minority-owned businesses struggling to get funding. And that's now, right? And there's programs for, Black-owned businesses or VC funding, right, for minority-owned businesses. How does that feel now versus 20 years ago going to get funding?
I'm telling you, I was a lawyer that was an expert in government and bureaucracy, and it was impossible for me to get an SBA loan. Yeah. It was incredibly hard. And I thought at the time, if I can't figure this out, how do people figure it out? Mm-hmm. Particularly small startup businesses.
I mean, I think what's to me fascinating about both San Jose and El Cosmico is also about, you went through this big career change. There was a total gamble financially, and I'm sure you had never done that before. So I'm also in a location that was a gamble at the time. So just throwing it all out. And, I think about two pieces. One, how did you make that big career change you probably could have gone in a totally different direction in your life. And why did you decide to go this way?
I don't know that I knew what world I was stepping into. I mean, it really, and when we talk about it is, huge gamble, huge change, that's true. But if you think about it, it was fairly low risk as far as, $500,000 was a lot, mm-hmm. but in the world of hotels, it's nothing. And I had to have my mom co-sign the note. Did I say that? It's true. But
Ghost is also named after her.
Right. But had it been higher stakes, I don't think anybody would have ever given me the loan or believed in me, nor would have I had the stomach to try it. There were so many nights that I laid awake and thought about selling the San Jose because I couldn't make payroll or I couldn't figure it out. But, and who knew that South Congress would take off the way it did, or who knew that I would do other hotels later on. I didn't know any of that then. I was just kind of scrappy. I wanted to do something different than what I was doing. And I really remember vividly at the time, my brother was HIV positive, and I had a friend who had full-blown AIDS. And during this time when I approached the San Jose to see if they would ever sell it, my friend Tony died in those few weeks. And it was kind of a decision for me. And it was one of those, I think a lot of us go through, particularly that early part of our lives, without facing mortality in that way. And it's a game changer when you do. I mean, it just changes everything. Anybody who's lost somebody that wasn't a grandparent, somebody that was significant to them and unexpected, I think it really changes the way we make decisions, and it changes the lens through which we see the world. And that happened for me at that moment. And so I really felt like I'm never going to know if I don't give this a shot.
Did it also change I also think about, you've created these spaces that feel like communities, that kind of feel like a dream and art and culture mixed together. And I'm wondering for you too, at that time, I think a lot about spaces for queer folks and how that was so critical it still is, but at that time period, being able to have a safe place and feel like you were your own community. Did that resonate with you, or did that have anything to do with it?
Enormously. I mean, I think it's sort of second nature to me, but I've always, it's funny when we talk about identity, but I've always identified as an outsider completely. I mean, I grew up in West Texas and I was this little dyke, you know, it's like, might not have known it at the time, but and so for me, you know, I just spent the last 2 or 3 years working the front desk at the San Jose motel, and that was my community. Those people there were a lot of people that lived there, and there were people that would come and go regularly, and those people had become my community and my friends. And so I think it was just, I somehow in my DNA, and then I was that creating community and sharing community, but somehow that made me be able to engineer that the people that I worked around me felt the same. I mean, we were this band of outsiders. I mean, I decided early on not to hire anybody with any hotel experience, which I would never do now, right? That's crazy. It's nuts. But we were charging $75 a night when we first opened the San Jose. And so the people that I was naturally drawn to were artists and gay people and musicians, and those were the first people that really ran the San Jose. It wasn't sustainable in the long run, but in the early days, we were just trying to get people indoors. You know, we had no idea. And so we did things that nobody would let you do now. And, you know, I would turn away people that wanted to rent the courtyard if I questioned their politics at all. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have, I still would, but that, you know, there are more people and more investors and more banks and more of all of that in the work I do now. But at the time it was kind of like, you know, come on, let's put on a play in the backyard and we'll charge everybody 25 cents to come and see it. You know, it was that sort of mentality.
So fun.
And it's people write me all the time now or email me or DM me, and they want to make a career change or they want to do hotels. And I don't know how to tell them that the magic it was this moment in time where the risk wasn't so high and I didn't know what I was doing. And I happened to get lucky with a lot of really talented people around me. And that's what happened. And I don't know how to tell somebody how to do that. You can't do it in Austin anymore.
I don't think so.
It's a little pricey here.
Yeah.
It's, Christina, to your question, it was a place, like the space that was created is a place that I healed after I had come out and had hard times with all sorts of people that were very dear to me. It was this like sacred space where I knew that I was safe. I knew that I belonged. I belonged in my complete form, not in my, like, in the place where I had to show up with a mask on. But like, I could be all of it there. And I mean, it really, between the patio at Joe's and 1,000 coffees there and maybe 150,000 bottles of wine at the San Jose.
And that was before Frosé.
It was before Frosé. We had some micheladas. Those were really good too. But it really was. It was like the first identifiably safe space for me as a human on this earth in Austin, Texas.
That's so nice to hear, Martha.
Thanks. I didn't fit at the cattle company. I didn't fit in West Austin, but I fit there. And it was...
Cattle company was that gay bar on 4th, right?
Yeah.
Ray K-Co, yeah. It was
I moved to Austin and I went there for an event, and I was like, I love that queer spaces are also taking up like the 2-step.
They have been for a long time in Texas.
That's right.
You guys, I forgot when we first opened the San Jose, I decided that I was going to hire, like, I didn't want to hire a bunch of brown folks in housekeeping, like just Latinas in housekeeping. So I started hiring musicians, and of course, mainly female. That's all that was really applying. And it was a disaster. I remember very well 2 women that worked for me that would just like it was hard, and they would just start crying and crying and crying. And it was one of those just experiments that didn't work out so well. Everybody quit on me.
Musicians as housekeepers.
And musicians are, like they're great for some jobs and then they're not for others.
Yeah, that's true. Hey Liz, so I told these guys that we are both debutante dykes.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And there are a couple things, like,
how about a sorority? I was also in a sorority.
And I was too. We were in the same sorority.
Mm-hmm.
But first, they asked about how the use of the word dyke, which who do you think, like, where are we with that word now?
I mean, I'm fine with it. I
Culturally.
like it. I don't know if it's generational either.
I don't either, but I
feel
love
like
it.
I feel like it's been reclaimed. But I talked to Erin, my wife is younger than me by 18 years, and she doesn't like the word so much.
She doesn't?
No, but I feel like it's like a reclaimed word.
I feel like it is too. Like queer.
Yeah. Well, queer is probably more acceptable and also broader, right? Way broader. To be a dyke, I think that you think of a particular kind of gay woman, and I don't know that that's really true. I don't.
Head nodders.
The head nodders. I mean, butcher, maybe? I don't know.
I think it feels like a butcher word to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think of my wife as a dyke, even though she's a dyke. She's funny.
I kind of think of it across the board, but I think that maybe I think of it too broadly.
Can you all explain for folks that don't, because I didn't know what a debutante was. Like, I hear the I have an image in my head, but I want to
know what a dyke is, but maybe not a debutante.
I know what a dyke is. Debutante is like, I'm looking up, like,
what the fuck?
Googling images. Also, I really think that we should have upload the pictures of y'all in your dresses, because the dresses are fantabulous. They remind me of quinceañera culture.
Yeah, totally.
It is like
it is quinceañera culture.
I actually think there needs to be a children's book from debutante to, like, it's like a board book, right? Like, how do you?
Okay, so what my experience was as a debutante, like, you are being introduced to the world as a marrying person.
Yes.
Yeah, as a marriageable person. And
that's the tradition.
Right? Like, there's even a bachelor's club, like, Deb Ball, where you are introduced to the bachelors as, like,
we call them
escorts. Get married to. So fucking weird to, like, say it out loud.
There is a great doc about Black debutante culture in the South by Margaret Brown. Has ever seen that? Yeah.
I haven't seen that, but I love what Margaret does.
I do too. So it's usually this thing that has happened that, like, you have to be invited, and so it's a society thing as well, which means that somebody's a member of something or somebody's giving money in a particular way, and it's traditionally a way of introducing your daughter to society to say she's eligible. And that was the tradition. I think it's far from that tradition by
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I don't know what it's like now.
And it's usually for some charity, ostensibly, like, there's a big ball, and it's usually a charity ball, and there's, a big band, and you have a white dress, and you come out. And you bow.
Yeah.
You bow all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
How old are you when you do it?
Different ages at different places. I was a sophomore in college.
I was a freshman in college.
Okay. Yeah. So what would Liz and Martha, what would sophomore, freshman, whatever, college aged you, how would you see yourself now?
Doing that?
No, like, how do you see yourself now, given that person that you were then? Like, what would that little 20-year-old look at your life now and say?
Oh my God, she would be like, really, I get to?
I feel like I had a real hesitancy when this happened. I remember I had a boyfriend, an older boyfriend occasionally at the time, who said that, had gone on and on about it, representing everything vile and elitist and a capitalist culture. And I agreed with him at the time. I mean, I'd spent the summer before in Mexico just like bumming around. And so I didn't want to do it. And then I saw how it was going to break my mother's heart and my grandmother's heart if I didn't. And it was like this huge thing. I really did it for them. But I mean, I was also realizing I was gay at right about the same time. So I think my whatever year-old self, 19-year-old self, 20-year-old self would have been stoked.
Mine would have been like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy to think about, like, from then probably till now, about just how much culture and space has like created space for families like your alls to be and exist. And
I couldn't have ever imagined that family. I mean, like Bowers v. Hardwick, when was that? Like, when was Bowers? In 2004? Wait, what year am I completely? That it was finally legal to have sex.
Right.
Which,
but did it even come to Texas?
Well, it was a Supreme Court decision that basically was, it was in Georgia, and it was a sodomy case where there were sodomy laws that considered it didn't have to be same-sex couples. It could be opposite-sex couples, but it was basically, there was a law against sodomy, which was oral sex or I think digital penetration, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But never enforced against anybody but gay people.
And I remember hearing George Bush, like we were in the bathroom at Guero's and he was the governor then, talking about how he was going to protect families and gay people were a real threat to families. And I'll never forget like absorbing all of that messaging.
Yeah. I mean, we're living in a really as far as publicly seen and supported more, not completely, but more LGBT families, 5-7 years really since the court decision, because before even then it was still like
pretty radical.
So much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be with two debutantes that have gone through their transitions.
That's right.
Like little butterflies.
That's right.
We're actually
it was 2004, maybe it was 2003 that Lawrence v. Texas overturned Bowers. So if you think about growing up in 1986 and sodomy, the Supreme Court had the chance to overturn sodomy laws and they didn't. Mm-hmm. And then it took another almost 20 years. Could that be true? So think about how shaping that was to understand that. I mean, I kind of like the idea of being an outlaw.
Yeah.
And that sex was basically illegal. But
made things harder, I'm sure.
Yes, and does.
Yeah. Anyhow, so I digress.
It is so interesting for me to hear this. I mean, I already know this, but the realization that separation of church and state is not really a thing, even though we talk about it.
We talk about it a lot, right?
And that it's really just separation of church and state for everyone that's in the out group.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And like, we need to start calling it what it is. It's not religious freedom. It is religious domination. And ironically for me, I find it so funny because whatever all the stuff is that we're accused of Sharia law, it's just Sharia law painted in someone else's religion. And by the way, Sharia law says you follow the laws of the country you live in, right? And so it's not even pushing religious law. It's like, okay, what are the laws where you live? Follow those laws. Everybody's doing Sharia law right now, whatever you call it. Or maybe we're outlaws. I don't know. But so it's just always so interesting for me to realize where the line is and who gets to draw it and what does that mean. Thank you for sharing that, right?
I know that you guys haven't asked yet, but you would wonder why I went to the DA's office in Manhattan. And
my next question would be,
Christina's in.
So I would tell you that I felt like at the time it was me and another guy. We were the first openly gay people hired at the DA's office. It was 1991. Openly gay. I mean, there were plenty of queers there. They were just like, closety. And I interviewed at Legal Aid at the same time and got a job offer from Legal Aid, and somebody with my politics probably would have gone to Legal Aid, but I really felt like that being able to be inside the power structure is where change can happen, sometimes more quickly if it's time. And so I actually am, it's funny, I'm still friends with, I went in with a class of, you went into different trial bureaus, and I was just at street crime, and there were 8 of us in the trial bureau I was in, and 5 of us are still regular friends and get together. And we just Zoomed the other night, and we were talking about that, about how it was, it was a crazy time. I was a member of ACT UP at the time. And of course, the DA's office didn't know what to do with that. Right. And ACT UP sure as hell didn't know what to do with an assistant district attorney at their meetings. I mean, it was the first year that we marched in the Gay Pride Parade, and we would like march between the police and the fire department. And my girlfriend at the time worked for the Minority Task Force on AIDS up in Harlem. And I was like, come on, come over and march with us. And she was like, fuck you, I'm with the House of Africa. Why don't you come march with us? But, there was a lot of change then. And I still stand by, I still think that it did make a difference. I mean, it would have happened any moment, but it was really interesting to be on the forefront of that moment when, I don't know, when people were coming out in power structures. Yeah. Because I do think it's one of the last places where people were really, I could probably that in Hollywood where people were really closeted.
And it changed everything.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so much of your story has been about like kind of key transformations that other people didn't see coming, perhaps. Like if we look at that debutante to, who you are today, queer mom, like probably other people couldn't have seen that, but you saw that and felt that in yourself. Creating El Cosmico and Hotel San Jose and becoming really like this renowned person of creating space and community from being, working in the Attorney General's office in Texas. Like those are big, big leaps. And I wanted to ask you if you could give advice to anybody listening that is a woman or like a mom in her career in life and like wants to make this big transition, is afraid to do it, because like both of those are big transitions or big coming outs, or I guess, how did you do that? What would be your advice to folks that are looking to make a big leap or transition in their own lives?
I mean, I have to say that of course I'm colored by coming from a place of some privilege, and somehow I think that makes you feel like you have a little bit better landing pad. So I appreciate where it feels like a bigger risk to make a big change. But I think it's also super scary not to make the change. I think we have one life, and I see so many people that are afraid of change, but they're really unhappy the way they are. And it just seems like such a waste of, it's such a waste of life to be so unhappy and so afraid of change that it just, it's a choice not to change as well. And so I think it's like, I don't know, create a network of people that support you and take get as ready as you can. And I think not, a lot of things aren't irreversible. I think you can always find another 9-to-5 job that you might be just as unhappy in. So, why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
So considering all these things, right? You've West Texas outsider, law school, DA, ACT UP, debutante, and then hotelier. Even with privilege, there were a lot of things going on internally, externally, right? Like, it doesn't sound like it was just easy. You would just wake up and be like, la, I know what I'm doing today.
No.
Talk us through, like you mentioned earlier, you have like sleepless nights, or you'd stay up wondering how you make payroll, right? Those are still, even having your mom co-sign your loan, right? Like, that's still stress, right?
Yeah.
Showing up as an openly queer woman at the, assistant DA, that's still stress, right?
I do have to say, I feel like if somebody could dispute me on this, I feel like I was the first woman to wear pants in the courtroom at the DA's office.
Oh, fun.
But it was a pantsuit. I've been, again, like I said, I've been lucky to have been able to cultivate some relationships of strong people that have supported me. And my girlfriend at the time, Martha will remember, Margaret Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret was also a lawyer. And when I was at the San Jose making, I think, $1,000 a month, if that, Margaret was supporting me. I don't know. I don't have a answer for that. I think it's self-reinforcing though.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you make a leap, even if it's a little leap, and that feels good and you feel relieved and you have some, you feel better. I think that reinforces you to be able to do the next thing and
take a bigger step.
The next thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I share that experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work and you have to like scramble, and that's also not the end of the world.
And it's okay if it doesn't work. Yeah. I mean, I've always felt, I don't no longer feel this way, but for a really long time, I've felt like I can always get a job waiting tables.
Totally.
Right now, I don't know
but
that
it's
I can
my
get a
hard
job
skills.
waiting tables. Right.
Yes. That's my hard skills. Like if all else fails, I can totally cook in a restaurant or wait tables. Okay. I have a final question. So we started with how being a mom, how your mom shaped the way that you engage with the world. I'm curious how becoming a mom
to Linda
has shaped how you engage with the world. I mean, I've gotten to witness some of it.
It's totally softened you, right? And it completely splits you wide open. And, he just turned 2 and he's really communicating and really, look, I don't even have words for it. I mean, it's just like watching them grow into these little beings that that is part of you. I definitely had I'd had some concern being an older parent, and I don't know if I really had concern, but I definitely thought about the fact that genetically he did not share my DNA, but it's so clear to me now that he's completely shaped and formed by me. I think to the point that he even has my hair.
Yeah, totally. I don't share DNA with my kids either, and I feel the same way.
Yeah. But it's been amazing. I can't believe I almost made it through life without having this experience.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
What you said, Martha, earlier, the coolest new job is being a mom.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, there's a lot of people with that job right now, aren't there?
Boy.
But it's the most, I'm sure it's the most of all the things you've done on your resume, right? Of all the things, it's still probably the most fun, enriching, and joyful. And I'm sure the challenges come later in the teen years, which I'm afraid of.
Those little bitties challenged me just fine.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking your time, like after putting your son down and coming to hang out with us late at night. We're doing recording actually kind of almost past everyone's bedtime because this is when moms can do it.
Right.
That's right.
And I wanted to just reflect on one of the things you said, you actually brought up a butterfly, you know, and I feel like if you look at your career, your life, there's just like these key moments about transforming and becoming something new. And also this like journey to find home. And it made me think a lot about actually the monarch butterfly. So the monarch butterfly, their homeland is in the state where my family comes from in Mexico, was Michoacan. And they'll travel 5,000 miles, some of them up to 5,000 miles, to come back to the state of Michoacan. And I was reading about them and the fact that, you know, they'll all get on these types of trees and they'll cluster in the millions. And that the reason they do that is because they create microclimates to protect one another. And I think so much about El Cosmico San Jose building these spaces in the 90s when queer communities were so under attack, like you created microclimates to protect a community.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Thank you.
So thank you for being
Yeah.
part of time and space with us and creating our own little microclimate for moms to protect. And
Sure. I'll hang out with you guys anytime.
You know, hearing her talk, to me, she really made the case for diversity, inclusion, and equity in the workplace. So much of the conversation that's going on right now, right? Being an outsider as a DA driving change, coming to Austin, being an outsider, building a hotel that really reset the culture in the city, right? Going out to West Texas, creating this community in every single one of those spaces. She was not part of the in crowd doing what like everyone says you should do. She was always outside looking in, just trying to figure things out. Yes, she had a cushion, it sounds like, with her family and a little bit of privilege, but she was still struggling, like swimming upstream. And look at all of the amazing accomplishments and contributions to our city and culture in the world that Liz has been able to drive. I don't need a business case. That is the business case.
That is the business case. It was really good. Well, and I mean, I can be more personal about it because Liz and I have been friends for 15, maybe even 20 years. We've been riding bicycles together. But in Liz, like, I'm able to see in the world an example of like what somebody who looks like me and who has my gender expression, what's possible for us, right? Like, I can see it. And part of, I think, why it took me so long to come out was that I didn't see myself in the community anywhere, because also what we were shown was such a narrow slice of the queer world. And it's so broad and colorful, and there's something for everyone there. But I didn't know that when I was 12 years old and shooting hoops trying to not be gay. Which is a really weird way to try not to be gay, but whatever. So I, like, from a personal place, it means so much to have people available to look up to.
Brings me back to the portrait of her mom, right? Red nails, shotgun over her shoulder.
Unapologetic.
How are we painting those pictures for our kids?
Right?
Texas.
Mine doesn't include red nails.
But you know what? It did
I don't have time to paint any nails. I want painted nails and I don't have time.
You know, yeah, I think one last thing I'll end on. I took so many notes, y'all. I have like pages and pages of notes I was scribbling, even just for myself, where I was like, wow. When she said, I don't share my children's genetics, that one hit me kind of hard, because we've talked so much about how we want to build a world for all of our children. And our love goes to all the children, right? Because we believe that vision is for all of our children. And so that one is still kind of rolling around in my head.
And then when she said, but I don't share his genetics, but I shape him, I mold him.
Mm-hmm.
He is, right? Like, and that's the truth. Like, the legacy of being a parent, like, is this massive responsibility, gift, and privilege. Like, Santi, I think about it sometimes because I think a lot about it during COVID. Actually, I've been thinking a lot about death, which is sad.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about perhaps the only people that will ever remember you, like always remember you, are your children or your mother or father, right? Like, those are the people that will really always remember you, no matter what, how long it's been or anything, because they will wake up thinking about you. They will go to sleep thinking about you. Like, you permeate everything that are, that's like part of that.